For 3,300 years, the most famous face in history has been lying to us. Not a small lie, not an innocent mistake, a deliberate, calculated deception buried beneath 22 pounds of solid gold. And we only discovered it because a team of physicists pointed a quantum imaging scanner at King Tut's death mask and saw something that should not exist. A name erased, hidden beneath the surface. A name that doesn't belong to a boy king. It belongs to a queen who vanished from history. Here's the deal. What I'm about to tell you hasn't made it into the official record yet. The findings are still being verified, debated behind closed doors, fought over by people whose entire careers depend on the old story being true. But the data is out there now, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. The mask everyone loves, the icon printed on 1 million posters and t-shirts, was never meant for Tutankhamun. It was stolen from someone else's tomb, and the evidence was always there. We just didn't have the technology to see it until now. The icon that fooled the world. November 1922. British archaeologist Howard Carter chisels a small hole into a sealed chamber in the Valley of the Kings. He holds up a candle. His hands are shaking. When asked if he can see anything, he whispers the now famous words, "Music, yes, wonderful things." The middle coffin is heavenly and laid in glass, completely unlike the other two, which are basically a pure gold appearance. Inside was a treasure hoard beyond imagination. Golden chariots, jeweled thrones, painted statues, frozen mid-stride. But buried deep within 3 nested coffins lay the one object that would captivate humanity forever. The golden death mask. Think about this for a second. This thing weighs more than a bowling ball. 22 pounds of solid gold inlaid with lapis, lazuli, and turquoise with eyes of obsidian and quartz that seem to follow you across the room. The ancient Egyptians believed gold was the literal flesh of the gods. This mask wasn't a decoration. It was sacred technology designed to help the pharaoh's soul recognize its own body in the afterlife. Without it, his spirit would wander lost for eternity. On the back, they carved a spell from the Book of the Dead, divine protection for the journey into darkness. For a century, the world accepted this mask as the ultimate masterpiece of ancient Egypt. Flawless, perfect, made specifically for the boy king who died at 19. But almost immediately, experts started noticing things that didn't add up. And the crazy part, the clues were never hidden. They were staring us in the face the entire time. We just refused to see them because if the clues were real, it meant music. Everything we believed about this mask was wrong. The 70-day impossibility. Here's what doesn't make sense. King Tut died suddenly, probably from an infection after shattering his leg. Egyptian religious law was absolute. A pharaoh had to be mummified and buried in exactly 70 days. Not 71, not 69, 70. Now think about what that means. 70 days to carve an entire royal tomb from solid limestone. 70 days to build 3 elaborate coffins that nest inside each other like Russian dolls. 70 days to gather thousands of burial artifacts. And 70 days to create a 22-pound solid gold mask with microscopic details, music, precious stone inlays, and hand-carved hieroglyphic spells from scratch for a death nobody saw coming. It's not that simple, though. The tomb itself screams rush job. It's tiny, music, embarrassingly small compared to other pharaohs' tombs. Some of the wall paintings look unfinished, like the artists dropped their brushes and ran. The massive stone sarcophagus is chipped on the corners, as if panicked workers had to smash pieces off just to cram it into the room. And get this, when researchers examined the other treasures, music, many of them weren't made for Tut at all. Statues with faces that looked nothing like him. Jewelry designed for a woman's body. Coffins with names that had been music, hastily scraped off and recarved. Then they looked at the mask again. Really looked. The ears were pierced. In ancient Egypt, that was a massive problem. Only children and women wore earrings. An adult male pharaoh on his sacred burial mask would never under any circumstances be depicted with pierced ears. The lows of the ears, each shaped differently, are pierced for earrings. It violated everything they believed about kingship and the afterlife. Some researchers also noticed the face looked off, too delicate, almost feminine, and the gold on the face had a slightly different color than the rest of the headdress, a subtle reddish tint that shouldn't be there if everything was cast at the same time. A terrifying theory began to form. What if when Tut died unexpectedly, there was no mask ready? What if the priests racing the sacred 70-day deadline grabbed a mask from someone else's tomb, altered it just enough to pass, and stuck it on the boy king's mummy? That raised one question that would haunt Egyptology for decades. Whose face was the mask originally made for? The answer was obvious, too obvious. And it pointed to the most dangerous woman in Egyptian history, the Vanishing Queen. Her name was Nefertiti. You've seen her face. That famous painted bust with the long neck and the knowing smile. She was Tut's stepmother, wife of the heretic pharaoh Akhenaten. And after her husband died, she did something unprecedented. Some scholars have begun to suggest that actually this may not belong to him at all, or it may not originally have been made for Shakamun. She may have seized the throne herself, ruling Egypt as pharaoh under a new name. Then she vanished completely. Her tomb has never been found. Her mummy has never been identified. She simply disappears from history like someone erased her on purpose. Here's what made researchers nervous. Music. If Nefertiti died before Tut, and if she had her own burial mass prepared, and if Tut died suddenly with nothing ready, the math worked out perfectly. The pierced ears made sense. The feminine features made sense. The rushed modifications made sense. But proving music, it was impossible. You'd have to damage the mask to look inside. And nobody was going to let that happen. For decades, the Nefertiti theory remained exactly that. Whispered about at conferences, dismissed by the establishment, impossible to prove on her. Let us know what you think in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more secrets they don't want you to know. Her name was Nefertiti. You've seen her face. That famous painted bust with the long neck and the knowing smile. She was Tut's stepmother, wife of the heretic pharaoh Akhenaten. And after her husband died, she did something unprecedented. Some scholars have begun to suggest that actually this may not belong to him at all, or it may not originally have been made for Shakamun. She may have seized the throne herself, ruling Egypt as pharaoh under a new name. Then she vanished completely. Her tomb has never been found. Her mummy has never been identified. She simply disappears from history like someone erased her on purpose. Here's what made researchers nervous. Music. If Nefertiti died before Tut, and if she had her own burial mass prepared, and if Tut died suddenly with nothing ready, the math worked out perfectly. The pierced ears made sense. The feminine features made sense. The rushed modifications made sense. But proving music, it was impossible. You'd have to damage the mask to look inside. And nobody was going to let that happen. For decades, the Nefertiti theory remained exactly that. Whispered about at conferences, dismissed by the establishment, impossible to prove. Then in 2014, someone broke the mask. And that accident would eventually expose everything. The disaster that changed everything. The story made international headlines. During a routine cleaning at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, a worker bumped the mask. The long braided beard, a sacred symbol of divine kingship, snapped clean off. What happened next was almost worse than the break itself. Instead of calling expert conservators, museum staff panicked. Music, they grabbed the first adhesive they could find. Epoxy, industrial strength glue meant for plumbing and car repairs. They globbed it on, shoved the beard back, and prayed nobody would notice. Everyone noticed. They had even smeared glue visibly on the golden chin. Music, Egypt's greatest treasure, which had survived for 33 centuries, had been damaged by hardware store adhesive. The Egyptian government brought in an international team led by German conservator Christian Ekman. His job was to fix the beard properly. But Ekman saw an opportunity. Before reattaching anything, he would scan the mask with X-ray fluorescent technology. He would answer the Nefertiti question once and for all. His logic was solid. If the face had been cut from another mask and soldered onto this one, music, the XRF scan would show it. Different gold compositions, solder lines, chemical signatures of alteration. His team spent months scanning every millimeter. The results seemed definitive. Music, the gold in the face, matched the gold in the headdress. The hieroglyphs spelling Tutankhamun showed no evidence of being carved over another name, and the delicate glass inlays around the eyes were perfectly intact. If anyone had soldered a new face on, the heat would have cracked that glass instantly. Case music closed. The Nefertiti theory was dead. The mask was 100% Tuts. Ekman's team removed the epoxy and reattached the beard with beeswax music, just like the ancient Egyptians would have used. It had been glued back together, but needed further repair work after images surfaced online showing a line of glue around its chin. The mask went back on display. The history book stayed the same. But here's the thing. A small group of scientists didn't music by it. They argued that Ekman's technology had a fatal blind spot. Music X-rays can see density. They can spot cracks and solder joints. But what if the ancient craftsmen were smarter than that? Music. What if they used gold from the same batch to plug the ear holes? What if they hammered the original name perfectly flat before recarving? Music. What if they attached a new face so precisely that the seam was only a few atoms thick? X-rays would see nothing. They can't read the history of metal. They can't tell the difference between gold that was poured once music and gold that was reheated, hammered, and reworked. To see that, you'd need a completely different kind of technology, something that could read the thermal memory of atoms themselves. And by 2024, that technology existed. The scan that changed history. Dr. Helene Voss is a materials physicist at the Max Planck Institute in Munich. Her specialty is quantum resonance imaging, a technology so new it barely exists outside classified laboratories. In late 2024, her team secured permission from the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities to perform a non-invasive scan of the mask. Officially, it was a calibration test. They wanted to prove their equipment worked on ancient gold. They weren't expecting to find anything Ekman had missed. The scan took place after the Grand Egyptian Museum closed for the night. Dr. Voss later described the setup to colleagues. The scanner hummed. The mask sat motionless under the beam. Data streamed onto laptops in real time. For hours, everything confirmed what they already knew. Then the scanner focused on the Kartu, the oval containing Tutankhamun's name. Dr. Ahmed Hassan, an Egyptologist from Cairo University who was present that night, said the room went dead silent. On the screen, beneath the carved hieroglyphs, the quantum imager was showing something else. A pattern of atomic displacement that shouldn't exist. Evidence that the gold in that exact spot had been hammered, scraped, and reworked in ways found nowhere else on the mask. Dr. Voss asked the technician to run the scan again. Same result. She asked him to recalibrate. Same result. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a metallurgist from Kyoto University who joined the team remotely, later said she couldn't process what she was seeing. The data was unambiguous. Someone had beaten the original hieroglyphs into oblivion and carved new ones over them. But that wasn't the most disturbing finding. Not even close. The ghost beneath the gold. The team ran a full structural analysis. What they found dismantled a century of assumptions. First, the ears. The X-rays showed solid gold. The quantum scan showed something different. Two perfect cylindrical plugs. Someone had filled the original pierced holes with rods of identical gold alloy, then hammered and polished them until the seams were invisible to any technology that existed before 2024. The ears had been plugged. The mask originally belonged to someone who wore earrings. Second, the face. The quantum imager detected what Dr. Voss called thermal ghosting around the entire perimeter, where the face meets the headdress. This is a molecular signature. It means the gold along that exact outline had been superheated to a different temperature than the surrounding metal. This was hopefully going to be the only intact royal burial ever found in the Valley of the Kings. The ancient craftsmen hadn't soldered from the front. That would have cracked the glass. They'd attached the new face from behind using high-pressure heating that left the visible surface flawless. The seam was invisible to X-rays, but the atoms remembered the face had been cut out and replaced. The room was silent for a long time. Dr. Hassan was the first to speak. He asked if the scanner could reconstruct what had been erased. Dr. Voss said yes. By mapping the microscopic traces of the original hammering, the ghostly impressions of the first inscription, the computer could digitally rebuild what had once been carved there. She initiated the program. The reconstruction took 11 minutes. Slowly, the original hieroglyphs materialized on screen. Dr. Tanaka, watching from Kyoto, said nobody breathed. The name emerged one symbol at a time. It was not Tutankhamun. The name was Nefer-Neferuaden, the throne name historians believe Nefertiti used when she became pharaoh.